So in this writing notes video for teaching strategies, I'm going to talk about an activity that I've done repeatedly that I think is really, really effective, both at teaching students to think about how they're structuring their arguments, but also to think about how audiences might respond. And that's an activity I call the public debate. So basically what this is I will divide the class into two halves and ask them to move to the two sides of the room, or whatever sort of physical configuration makes the most sense to divide them from one another. Then each side is assigned a particular position on a debate. Now, I tend to shy away from anything that's likely to really inflame passions, but also you want something that students are going to have some sort of stake in. So one debate topic that I've used that's gone really, really well is whether the university's library should buy more computers and get rid of books, or move books to storage in favor of computers and study areas, or whether the library should invest in more books and encourage students to use those rather than relying on digital resources. Students tend to have some background, some information. They tend to be at least a little bit familiar with the university's library, so they can bring some to this. But they also don't tend to be super, super invested in this. So this isn't like I'm asking a deeply pro-life student to defend pro-choice, or I'm asking someone who's stridently dedicated to gun control to make the argument for expanded Second Amendment rights. Students don't tend to get that emotionally invested in this, which, for my money, means that they are easier able to make reasonable, rational arguments rather than sort of having some sort of deep personal struggle with this. So then what I do, this is, by the way, this public debate is for me a full class period activity. Generally, if it's a 75-minute class period, maybe not the whole time, but with a 50-minute class period for like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, this and an opening writing prompt are pretty much all that we do. So what I do is I start by giving students 20-25 minutes or so, usually probably more like 20, so that they can research their topic. Most students, I've found, will have their laptops with them or smartphones or something like this. If that's a concern for you, you can ask them to bring those things in the previous class. If you just sort of mention, we'll be doing in-class research next time, they can generally do that. Or if you have a large number of students who don't have easy access to laptops or smartphones or things like that, this might be something that you could try and book a computer lab for that day. So you give students maybe 20 minutes or so to do some research and to plan their argument. Now, one of the things that I really emphasize for this 20 minutes, and I'll sort of repeat this periodically, is that they need to organize how they're going to present their arguments. Because one thing I found is that students will get caught up in the research trap, where they will their inclination is to just spend 20 minutes reading about this subject and trying to find arguments, trying to find evidence. And then they don't have a well-organized argument when it comes to the debate itself. So that's one of the things that I emphasize, is take at least the last 5 minutes of your research and planning time to organize the argument, to figure out who's going to say what, in what order, how you're going to connect your evidence to your claims, etc., etc. All that good stuff that we in rhetoric love. So once you're at the end of that 20 minutes or so, however long you give them, I typically give each side 5 minutes uninterrupted to make its case. So one side will make its argument for 5 minutes, then the other side will make its argument for 5 minutes. Very often they don't go the full 5 minutes, but that's fine. I don't worry that much about that as long as they have made the argument that they want to make, presented the evidence that they want to present, and established the connections that they want to establish to build their case. Then I give the whole class 2 minutes, 3 minutes maybe to think about what the other side has said and to consider some potential counter-arguments. Then each side gets 2 minutes or 3 minutes, depending on how much time we have left in the class period, to respond to what the other side has said. So this is a multi-stage debate. And I explain that right from the beginning, so they know what to expect over the course of the class period. But you start with the research period, so they can gather evidence, think about the arguments that they want to make, and also think about what counter-arguments they anticipate from the other side. Then you have 5-minute blocks where each side presents their argument, a short block of time for considering the other side's argument and developing a rebuttal, and then short, maybe 2 to 3 minute blocks to present those rebuttals. You can then at the end ask the class as a whole which side do they think put forward the more convincing case, though oftentimes the benefits of doing that are pretty minimal because typically the majority of students on each side will say that their side won, so you don't necessarily learn that much from asking students to assess who was more persuasive, but it is something that I do often do with this activity. But again, the overall sort of benefits of this activity, this helps students think about how they're finding information or evidence for an argument. It helps them think about how they are putting together their arguments. So are they using a Toulmin structure? Are they using Rogerian argument? Are they using syllogisms, whatever it is? And then it helps students think about counter-arguments. Think about how they might respond to the arguments that a competing perspective might offer. So this is a really, really useful activity that covers a lot of ground, and it helps students do the kinds of things that we want them to do in projects like researched arguments.